You are listening to the Health and Wellness Connection podcast, the number one wellness podcast designed to provide the latest information to help you achieve your health and wellness goals. Our show features exciting guests, the latest in medical research, and in-depth discussions in current trends on weight loss, nutrition, and fitness. No matter what your interest, the Health and Wellness podcast has you covered. And now, presenting your illustrious host, Dr. Barry, MD. Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Health and Wellness Connection. I'm your host, Dr. Barry, and I want to thank you for joining us today with what I hope will be a very entertaining show. We got a lot of cool stuff to cover today, a lot of myths to debunk, and a lot of viral stories to expose. But again, before we get into that, let me just go ahead and do the, credits or whatever you want to call it, acknowledgements. Just want to give a shout out to all the listeners, guys. Appreciate all the love we've been getting on social media. The numbers, Spotify numbers looking great. Definitely don't forget to share the show. Don't forget to tell a friend. Again, we're providing unbiased information straight from the source. We're going to news journals, presenting relevant medical data. It can hopefully be a boost to your everyday life and maybe help you choose a healthier path forward. Now, that being said, we try to be here non-biased. We're completely unpaid. I'm doing this show for free. We just definitely appreciate donations, though. If you do want to support the show, it's always best to get support from the listeners, as it helps reduce any kind of, potential bias. Now, that being said, we are here for you. So if you have any requests or concerns, do not hesitate to reach out at drbarryhealth@gmail.com. That's drbarryhealth@gmail.com. Also, you can hit us on Instagram, Dr. Barry MD. That's Dr. Barry MD, and on Twitter, Dr. Barry Tech Doc. So again, we are here to hopefully give you some cool information today. We got some really relevant info. And the first thing we want to start is regarding the heat wave. Summertime, and the temperatures are rising, guys. It's getting very dangerous to be outside. Temperatures, over 40 degrees Celsius, 100 plus degrees Fahrenheit. And it's definitely not safe. We see this again. I am a board certified emergency medicine physician, by the way, as well as a health and wellness physician. So, I do see a lot of patients coming in. Now, I do work in Houston, Texas, also something relevant we'll discuss further. But in Houston, it's in the southern part of the United States of America, and it gets pretty hot here during the summer time. We see temps here 105, 106 degrees. Now, temperatures are rising all across the United States, as well as Europe and other parts of the globe as well. But the thing is, states or areas that are not used to very, very hot temperatures tend to have people who suffer more during this period, mainly because the environment is not really adapted to hot environments, particularly in the Midwest of America and other states, mid-Atlantic. You see actually higher numbers of ER-related visits. This is data taken from a new article that came out on cnnhealth.com. Check it out if you want some more updates. And I have a link to it on the Twitter account, guys. So follow me there, Dr. Barry Tech Doc, to get links to all these articles. Anyway, so the Midwest, Mid-Atlantic, some of the highest areas, we're seeing ER-related, heat-related visits. And you see these temps are only hitting about 90 degrees Celsius. And this becomes very dangerous, even though 90 degrees may not be that much if you're in the southern part of the country or in Western Africa, other places where they're used to heat. There in the mountain Midwest, many buildings are not fitted for AC. So you have a hot building that's not really designed to be in hot temperatures. So the people who are in those buildings tend to have higher risk of medical complications. And of course, the biggest complication with heat-related illness is heat stroke. When you get a heat stroke or you have a heat-related illness, you tend to have neurological defects. So if you see somebody, you call grandma and she's in her home, she doesn't have AC, temperatures are not higher, upper levels, 90 plus. She sounds confused. She sounds altered. That could be a risk of potential stroke due to heat, and that person will require medical attention. So you have to be very careful. And if you do see people suffering from these kind of things, be very vigilant, because people can die from this. It's actually very dangerous. And if you're someone who's outdoors, you work outdoors, you're out and about. Let's say you're a day laborer, you're doing roofing, you're working out in the fields, you're doing, cutting grass, things like that. Be sure you are hydrating as well. Dehydration, acute dehydration is very dangerous and can cause many complications, including kidney failure. You can go into, potential cardiac arrest if your electrolytes are off. So it's very important you're hydrating aggressively during any periods of high heat. If you're, in an area that's used to heat, like you're in the South, you should hopefully be more familiar with how to deal with the high heat by staying indoors when you can, stay in shaded areas. Avoid going out in high noon, middle of the day. Between the times of 2 to 4 tend to be the hottest period, so you want to avoid being outdoors, especially here in Houston, where I'm based. A lot of people are moving down here, and it's getting very, very popular. So popular, in fact, there's plenty of propaganda online. One we will debunk here in the next story. But that being said, people may be down in the certain areas, especially cities like Houston, other popular cities, and they may not be used to the high temperatures. So it's very important that if you are someone who's recently moved to the city or you're not used to the temperatures, you're very careful how you move about, especially during the summer months. You have to be very careful being outdoors for extended periods. And if you are outdoors, you're having hydration, readily available. People now carrying these Stanley mugs, which are, I think, very, very good, very large, and you can fill it with water, hydrate throughout the day to keep yourself from becoming a victim out here, because this heat will take you out. It's not nothing to play with. This heat right here has taken many lives, so you want to take it very serious when you're out and about during the summertime in the South. So that being said, just quick tips, guys, to stay safe in the heat. Again, main thing I mentioned a lot of them already, hydrate. Something with electrolytes in them is actually a very good option as well. So like Pedialyte or Gatorade if you're very dehydrated. But drinking a lot of fluids and eating normal foods will help as well. And secondly, you want to make sure that if you're doing something that requires prolonged outdoor exposure, like mowing the grass, take breaks, guys. You can take a break, hydrate, give yourself a chance to cool off, then go back out and finish up the job, and just try to make sure you're not overexposed. So those are the main things, guys. So the heat is one thing, but there's another concern that has been rising, and we're seeing various stories pop out online, and that is the concern of sexually transmitted diseases. Now, we know during the summer months, STDs tend to spike because people tend to be quote unquote outside more often than not. And often not, they're, hooking up, linking up, exchanging fluids and whatnot. So it can be quite, a scary sight if you're, out here unprotected doing what you, think is, what you should be doing. Now, again, that being said, there's always concern for increased STD rates when these things occur, especially during the summer months. I remember a couple of years ago, there was a herpes outbreak at one of the Coachella festivals out there in California. But recently there was a story that went viral on social media where they stated that there was a potentially there was an outbreak of HIV in Houston, Texas. Apparently some quote unquote TikToker / disinformation agent is what I call them. But anyways, they put out a story stating that there was approximately 40,000 new diagnoses of HIV and 10,000 diagnoses of syphilis and whatnot. And they posted online saying that Houston is getting scary and watch out, the HIV is just everywhere and look at these new diagnoses, this and that. And it turned out it was just nothing but lies, actually. There was actually, what they did actually, according to the latest report that was actually revealed by KPRC, a local news outlet here in Houston. They stated that the person apparently put a picture up of new screening test numbers, meaning people who just were screened for those diseases, not anyone who had been diagnosed. That information had been, was clearly privatized and placed in a different whole area of the file they're in. But apparently they screenshotted this screening test, meaning everyone who came to the clinic that week and got a test, positive or negative, just if you had a test. And of course, that was 40,000 something. So that's actually, to me, very good, actually. If you had that many people every week getting screened, that's a great thing, because that will actually help reduce the spread of HIV if people are getting screened. So I encourage everybody, if you are someone who is out here, doing it, just recklessly, you're out here just raw dogging it, if you will, unprotected, sex, multiple partners, you're someone who needs to be getting screened regularly. Now, of course, that's something you should not be doing. It's extremely, it's extremely, not consistent with long life. So you want to be careful doing all that. and you should be using protection and making sure you're, being smart about where you put your privates. I mean, it's not something you should take lightly, honestly, because you can definitely get something that's incurable and life-threatening if you don't. So that being said, these were screening numbers, guys, not new diagnoses. So it actually, completely was an outrageous kind of assertion. The reality is that every year, about 200,000 people are diagnosed, and those numbers have been falling. I think global numbers of HIV are actually falling as well. As the word is out, HIV is a life-threatening illness, so do not be out here playing anyhow. I think global numbers, last I checked, 1.5 million people globally were diagnosed last year. Sorry, 1.3 million were diagnosed in 2023. And 1.5 the year before. So it was actually a 200,000 person drop from 2022 to 2023. So we're moving in the right direction, guys. HIV is something everyone's aware of now. We have people getting actively screened, like in the city of Houston. You saw, large numbers getting screened weekly. And we need to do that and encourage that to ensure that we reduce the spread. So guys, ignore the hype. HIV is not a new outbreak of HIV, but everything isn't rosy, guys. There's actually numbers that were released earlier this year that do show that STD rates in the country are actually rising. And there's actually reports found curable STIs like chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis, trichomoniasis. They're actually going up as well, especially between groups 15 to 49. They said there are about 1 million infections daily amongst adults in America with those 4 illnesses: chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis, trichomonas. So 1 million people every day are diagnosed with that newly across the country. So it's pretty shocking that, these old illnesses that people should be doing the most to recognize and avoid, people are still getting those at extremely consistent rates. There's rates of increase across the board of syphilis, as well as, like I said, trichomoniasis, and others. So just got to be careful, guys. These are infections that are, while curable, the treatments potentially can develop resistance, and they can end up being difficult to treat. So just because you have gonorrhea, you can get a shot and you're clear in a week, doesn't mean that you'll get a shot and be clear in a week 10 years from now, because these bacteria evolve, they get stronger, they get more resistant to bugs, and it can get scary. So, it's best to avoid these infections. I can't say it enough. You want to use protection. You want to have partners that you're screened before intercourse. And if you're someone that, you have a partner that you're dedicated to, then you can definitely be unprotected and making sure you're screened before that. So either way, there's definitely some dangers out here. So you want to be cautious how you're out here moving because of these viral stories, which may have a good thing. Maybe people are going to be more cautious now because they think there's an outbreak and they'll be insisting on protection. So maybe there's a good thing, but they are definitely inaccurate. There's no outrageous growth of HIV in Houston, Texas. And just to be official again, the last reported numbers that we do have on HIV specifically were in 2019, and there is an upward trend. We're averaging about 29,000, about 30,000 new cases per year as far as new diagnoses, so almost about 2,000 to 3,000 a month. And the number one group, actually, that is the most diagnosed are men between the ages of 20 to 39. Those are the highest group, up to 49. Actually, 20 to 49 are the biggest group. As far as the differences, you had this is for Harris County, guys, which is the main county in Houston. You had about just under 8,000 females and about 22,000 males. So definitely, and the highest risk group is men who sleep with men or men who engage in homosexual activity. So, those groups, I think high risk groups need definitely strong education, and also maybe consider preventative treatment. Truvada is a very commonly used medication to help prevent spread of HIV in those who are actively having intercourse with others who may have HIV. So HIV is definitely very real. The rates are definitely going up, but definitely not to the levels that were reported on that post. So, like I said, STD is very real, very concerning. There's also been an increase in syphilis as well. Syphilis numbers also rising in Harris County. It was reported that syphilis, it went from about 1,845 cases in 2019 to about 2,905 cases reported in 2022. So definitely, pretty much about a 57% increase in syphilis cases. So we have to see, and those are curable. So I think just people not monitoring themselves and not being careful has led to some of this. And this one, thankfully, is easily cured. HIV is not curable, but there's a lot of medications that are very effective in preventing the spread of the illness. So let's be careful, guys. STDs are real. There's definitely concern of STDs and the rates going up. So be careful as far as how you're out here moving. And if you're a high-risk group, be sure you're taking care of yourself, getting regularly screened, and considering potentially using preventative treatment to help prevent the spread. All right, guys, when it comes to summer months, there's also other bugs, not necessarily STDs, that are a concern. You have mosquito-borne illnesses. Mosquitoes are also big during the summertime. They tend to proliferate during the warmer weather. They also like when the rains are common. They tend to develop and actually reproduce in stagnant water. So this is why it's very important, if you're in an area that's prone to mosquitoes, you're clearing water out. Either way, mosquitoes are a big deal this year. Why? Because they're actually bringing in new illnesses. There's been there's a concern. The CDC has just proposed that dengue fever, which is a very common mosquito spread virus. So mosquitoes, they actually work by biting human hosts, extracting blood. The blood is actually important for how they reproduce. So they go for humans, get their blood, and in this process, they're actually transmitting illnesses to humans. And they actually inject viruses into the humans, which actually then creates a host environment. The human then runs and gets bit by another mosquito, which extracts the blood from that infected human, and now it has an infective blood that it spreads to someone else. So it's a very wicked animal. I hate mosquitoes. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. It's one of the few animals I think should be eliminated from the ecosystem. I know it sounds terrible, but they really bring no use to society. Either way. So mosquitoes are potentially responsible for dengue outbreaks we're seeing in southern America, or actually southern parts of America. They're actually endemic in Southern America, particularly Brazil, even in the Caribbean, like Puerto Rico. You see a lot of cases of this infection. And so what we're seeing is that parts of the United States are actually getting dengue positive patients because people are traveling between these endemic areas, coming back to the United States, infected. Mosquitoes here then bite these people, who then themselves get infected, and then they bite other people, which then spread it. So it's a pretty crazy thing, guys, this dengue fever, or most mosquito-borne illnesses. And so dengue fever, like I said, it's something that some people get mild symptoms, others get very dangerous symptoms. Typically you have fever, you get nausea, vomiting, rashes break out, and those are the typical symptoms you get. Thankfully, people aren't dying from dengue, especially when you compare it to other illnesses like malaria, which is definitely responsible for killing many people who it infects. So dengue, definitely not the worst illness, but definitely not fun to have. About globally, you have about 100 million people get dengue, but only about 40,000 die of severe dengue, according to the CDC. So yes, it can be deadly. It's definitely not the most deadliest virus, but it's nothing to really joke around with. This is why sometimes people recommend getting a vaccine for dengue, which it does exist. You can take before going to an endemic area. However, if you're someone who doesn't like getting injections, you can definitely focus on mosquito avoidance, making sure that if you're going to an area that's endemic to dengue, you're maybe using mosquito repellent. You're also using long clothes, avoiding areas that are problematic for mosquitoes, things like that. So mosquito bites, again, the most important thing to avoid contracting this infection. And so this is why I want to talk briefly about how to avoid or deal with mosquito bites. Now, of course, if you do get if you're in an endemic area, DEET, which is a very popular mosquito repellent created during the 50s, I want to say, used for I guess it developed for World War II when they were trying to keep people from getting sick. DEET officially it's a chemical, stands for N-diethyl metatoluamide. So it's something that's used for decades now. It's considered safe because of all the extensive testing that's been done. It hasn't shown to have any birth defects or any issues. So something that, while it's a chemical, I recommend it. I think not all chemicals are bad, but this is one that's relatively safe with a pretty long track record. Now, if you're someone who's like anti-chemical, you want to keep it natural, this and that, I understand that. There are some options as well you can try. Big fan of this is, I'm a big fan of lemon eucalyptus oil. It's very, those kind of scents like the lemon, very noxious to the mosquitoes, so they don't like it. So if you put that on, put it around you, put it like in a misting device and just kind of have it spray around you, it'll help repel mosquitoes. Lavender is also very excellent as well. Lavender, if you remember an old show I did about common spices, one of my favorite spices, only because it's very effective for sleep if you take it, but also it's a mosquito repellent. So if you put it in an oil, a little, kind of a little outdoor oil diffuser, if you will, whatever, it's very effective in repelling mosquitoes. Cinnamon oil is also very good as well. Thyme oil is very good as well. So a lot of these really potent aromatic oils are also very effective in repelling mosquitoes. Citronella is also the fan favorite. People have been using that for decades, centuries. Citronella is a common, natural, and effective oil. The plant is also very effective. You can buy the plant too and plant in your garden. You can get the oil and put it like in a diffuser and have that spray. This is actually very popular in Asia. I remember I was in Thailand. There was an oil that I bought. It was citronella and had tea trees and some other oils in there. Very effective in repelling mosquitoes, and it's a natural option. And again, tea tree oil, neem oil, all those are excellent options as well. So a lot of things you want to do, but you definitely want to avoid getting bitten if you can. So just be careful out there, guys. Summertime mosquitoes are out. Avoid mosquitoes, avoid illness. Okay, on another front, the weight loss front, Novo Nordisk Wegovy, that drug we've been talking about for months now. Apparently it just got approved in China. So Novo Nordisk is, again, they are a drug company. They are based in Europe, and they are actually been, they're responsible for this Wegovy that's been taking over the weight loss industry just for some months now, generating just billions and billions of dollars. I think the last revenue report for Novo Nordisk was $9 billion in the quarter ending March 31st. This is, again, for the 12-month period since March 31st, they've made $35 billion, 34% increase year over year. So they're raking in the cash, guys. So Wegovy has been an instant hit for them. And of course, China, which is, definitely not is not against making money, they've decided to approve Wegovy for use in China. Now, of course, China is a developing country, and they actually have been developing an obesity problem of their own as they've started to increase their GDP and people start to make more money. They're eating more and getting bigger like those in the West. So I guess they feel they can use this as well, but we all know what's likely will result what likely happen, as a result of them getting Wegovy. Yes, you know it. We're gonna get 100 different knockoffs of Wegovy. So I'm not promoting using off-brand Wegovy, but it's going to be developed. The Chinese are champions of reverse engineering products and remarketing them. So those who've been, upset about the high price of Wegovy may get what they want with a cheap Chinese alternative now. Obviously, I don't recommend taking anything that's not been tested and undergone rigorous screening. But hey, those people who really try to get to Wegovy but can't afford it, this may potentially open up some doors. That being said, I think obviously the best option is to try to focus on diet and exercise and just controlling your body. I think ultimately Wegovy works because it helps reduce those cravings and all those things that you get. But honestly, I think a lot of that is mental. And if we can, mind over matter, some of these cravings, you can actually probably do a lot. And I think that, Wegovy is a great option, but it's definitely not essential. You can definitely do it without it, and just takes a lot of more dedication and focus. But China is now going to be allowing Wegovy to be sold in the mainland, so that should probably do really well for Novo Nordisk's bottom line. So if you're someone who wants to put some money somewhere and see it grow, Novo Nordisk may not be a bad option, at least for now. Anyways, moving on. All right, guys, so let's talk briefly about some depression news. I know depression is something that people don't like talking about, but it's actually one of the most common illnesses in America, leading to all kinds of things like low productivity, suicide, and things like that. So I think dealing with depression has been a big issue that hasn't got enough attention. So I try to bring some of that to the show. But briefly, there's been a new study showing extended release ketamine may be promising for treating depression. This trial, they did twice weekly dosing of extended release ketamine, and they found that people who were on this formulation had significant increases in their happiness level, decreased levels of depression, tend to have more functioning lives, basically. And so ketamine, which is, again, was previously a street drug that was developed by the CIA, but we won't get into all that. But either way, it was used on the underground, and it had been used, in many, harmful ways previously, but they're seeing now that it may be an effective way if used in a controlled setting to treat depression. And I think if it works, hey, let's give it a shot. Ultimately, depression can be very hard to deal with for those who suffer from it. During periods of increased stress, depression can be very deadly, and it can lead to all kinds of life issues. So I think treating it is something that we should look at. And if ketamine works, I think something that should be definitely brought to the forefront. Now, again, this is a very small study that we looked at here. I think it had about 100 people, and they looked at 231 people, and they looked at those who were on a twice monthly regimen of ketamine. They found that they had a significant reduction in depression, about 50% reduction in their depression before and after the treatment started. So very effective, and it's something that should be looked at, I think, definitely given these numbers. And also, during the summertime, people tend to move about, try to do things to reduce their depression, be it traveling, be it taking time off, or just, staying at home. Ultimately, I think psychotherapy is still the best option, talking with a professional to help you deal with some of your issues. In addition to drug therapy, you want to do both those things, in my opinion, to help. And, ultimately, depression is something that can be treated and should be, taken very seriously. If you're someone who's been diagnosed with it, I definitely encourage you to continue taking your prescriptions, follow up diligently with your primary care doctor and your psychiatrist, or your, someone who you're talking to. It can even be a religious figure. Some people deal with it by talking with their pastors or their imams or whomever they look at for some sort of higher level of knowledge and emotional intelligence, if you will. But either way, it's something that I highly recommend people take seriously, because untreated depression can be very deadly. And I've unfortunately seen the side effects of this in the emergency room. So, definitely talk with a professional if you're someone who may be benefiting from some of these treatment options. All right, guys, the last study of the day talks about screen time. Apparently, screens and other electronic devices are potentially being abused by both parents and children. A new study from the pediatric journal research shows that parent screen time use is associated with increased adolescent screen time use. And the screen time meaning social media, video games, mobile phones, things like that. During the summer months, people are going to be on their screens more. There's less thing to do for the kids during the summertime. And so the pediatric journal is just recommending that parents are aware of how much they're using their screens around their children. Because unfortunately, if parents are on their phones or devices, then the kids will be on their phones and devices. And overall, you have more exposure to the ills of the internet and the interwebs. Obviously, now everything's not bad. There are very good platforms that can be very educational for children, and there's very good, sources of information that are very helpful. But let's be honest, most of the children are on games like Roblox or other, video games, and hopefully there's not even harmful content they're being exposed to with the excessive time. But all the rest of those things are happening or increased when there's increased screen usage. So definitely want to try to reduce screen usage around your children if you're a parent. And also if you're a kid or you're a young person, you want to try to reduce the amount of time you're using screens and try to do more things that are active and outdoorsy, if you will. Now, of course, since the pandemic occurred, this is when the screen usage really skyrocketed. People went to online learning, people didn't want to go out, and this kind of made everyone start to focus on using devices to get things done as opposed to going out physically and doing them. And this is what the journal actually acknowledges. So they're saying that people need to look at making a concerted effort to avoid using excessive screen time, especially if you're a parent around your child, because they see you doing the screen thing, they're going to be wanting to do the screen thing, and before you know it, everyone's on the screens and people are interacting with one another. And for children, this could be harmful because of the potential risk to their social development skills, their ability to interact with others, things like that, which is when it's supposed to be the strongest, when you're a child. If you're a child and you have social and interactive issues, what happens when you become an adult, when people tend to get more stuck in their ways and whatnot. So either way, guys, try to use those screens less. I'm guilty of this as well. So I think everyone can look at doing this less, especially around the children. All right, guys. So that is all for today's show. A lot of interesting stories, I think, but ultimately we're going to have to do more when there's more information out there to discuss. And again, if you have any stories or anything you want me to discuss, please feel free to reach out, send me an email, drbarryhealth@gmail.com. And again, you can follow the show, Health and Wellness Connection, available on all streaming devices, all streaming platforms, I should say, as well, like Apple Music, Spotify, and the like. If you want to donate, please Cash App at Dr. Barry Health, or you can actually donate via our Spotify page. So again, thanks guys for listening. Until next time, peace.
Thank you for listening to the Health and Wellness Connection podcast and radio show. For more information on ways to get healthy, please check us out. www.anchor.fm/HW Connection. Here you can re-listen to the show, check out older shows, and even further support the show by becoming a subscriber to the podcast. Please check us out today. Again, that's anchor.fm/HW Connection. And also, don't forget to follow Dr. Barry on Instagram at DrBarryMD. Until next time, stay healthy.